Hi guys, and welcome to the world premiere of the Culinary Cougar, for which we will be making some recipes here in my home classroom kitchen. Today's recipe is going to be homemade applesauce, and I put the ingredients up here on the whiteboard. So you're going to need 4 apples, and we'll peel those and core those in just a second. You're going to need 3/4 of a cup of water, 1 cup of white sugar, and half a teaspoon of cinnamon. So I'll give you a second to gather those supplies. You can see if I bring it right around the corner here, I have everything gathered and ready on the counter. So we've got apples. I have a few extra apples. My apples are kind of small. You don't have to be super precise for this recipe. So if you have some extra stuff you want to throw in, that's a-okay. You're going to need some sugar, which is this right here. You're going to need some measuring cups, measuring spoons for the cinnamon, because you just need a little bit of cinnamon. We have this is called a spoon, a wooden spoon that you want to stir stuff with. And we've got our knife here that we'll use to cut our apples, cinnamon, and the water, of course, is going to come out of our lovely sink. I didn't prepare the water for you guys. So let's get started. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some, first of all, I'm going to move my power cord from my laptop. And then I'm going to take an apple. And we got an apple right here, just a little guy. They're getting kind of old in my fridge, and I'm not going to lie, this is why I chose this recipe. This is a great thing to do if you've got some apples that are like, I could eat that, but I'd really rather not. So if you have a fancy thing where you turn the crank and it peels and cores the apple, that would be awesome to use that. I don't have one of those. I've got a knife. So very carefully, and you might want to get somebody to help you with this. Okay, just taking the skin off and going all the way around the apple. And I'll hold it up so you can actually see it. Try not to get too much apple left on the skin because you want to use all that great apple stuff in your applesauce. And it's okay if you do. It's not a big deal at all. Like I said, precision's not our thing here. Some recipes you got to be really careful. This is not one of them. Okay, so you end up with an apple that is all mostly peeled. I got a little bit of extra peel there on the bottom. Take that off. Okay, and I'm going to put it onto my lovely handy dandy board so you can actually see it, and I'll show you how to get the core out. Okay, so just kind of cut straight down through. You don't want any of that tough stuff in the middle of the apple. Here's your applesauce, kind of a funny texture. Here's your core. And here you're left with all these lovely apple bits. And how big you cut them is going to kind of depend on how chunky you like your applesauce. If you like it really chunky, you can leave them big. I'm going to have mine about that size. Whoops, right there. And they're going to roll off, and that's fine. Okay. If you don't like them, like your applesauce that chunky, you can cut them a little bit smaller. And so I'm cutting them down. More important that they're pretty close to the same size. It doesn't have to be perfect. I've got a little extra skin on there. Just gonna whip that off. No big deal. If they're all about the same size, then they'll all cook at about the same rate. And that's really what you want. You don't want overdone bits of apple in your applesauce. Okay. So here's my first apple all cut up. And make some room on the cutting board for that. So I'm going to put it right into my saucepan where it can wait for a few minutes. Okay, so take a second and get all 4 to 6 of your apples cut. And I'll do the same. Important safety tip for those of you guys playing at home, make sure that you're not cutting it down into your hand. Put it down on the cutting board. All right, it goes down like this and then cut it like that. Okay, hold on to the apple, but watch where your knife is so you're not accidentally cutting yourself. Definitely don't want to do that. You can add lots of things into your applesauce, like if you've got some strawberries laying around, but injuries from your finger is nothing that I would like to add into my applesauce. right, that should do it as far as our apples are concerned. And here is our saucepan with the apples in it. I got a little bit of apple peel in there. Let's pick that up. Okay, there's your apples. And now we are going to add our sugar. Okay, so the recipe says to combine all the items from the recipe into the saucepan and then just cook it. It's a super easy recipe. I like to keep the recipe on my phone so I know how much I need to add. It's a helpful hint for you guys. Okay, so 1/4 cup of white sugar. So 1/4 cup is the smallest one I have. It looks like that. This is a dry measuring cup. Okay, so I'm going to go right into my sugar like that. Make sure it's pretty even across the top. Okay, so 1/4 cup of sugar is going to look about like that. Pour right in. Okay, next. Recipe says to add 3/4 cup of water. Different measuring cup for that. Although if you only have one, it's really not a big deal. So here's about 3/4 cup of water. You can put it on the counter and make sure that that line of your water is right at that marking that says 3/4 cup, and mine's pretty good. So we're going to go ahead with that. Pour right into your saucepan. And the last thing you need to add is a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. So I'm going to look, they're all marked. Okay, I have 1/2 teaspoon. About the, I don't know, second biggest one here. All right, and here's my cinnamon. Ta-da. And again, just add it right in. And make sure it's pretty even across the top. Goes right into your saucepan. All right, the last thing, I've got a little sugar on my hands, so I'm going to rinse it off real quick before I do anything else. Okay, the last thing you need to do is just to stir this all together, okay, and to put it on your stove for about 15 to 20 minutes. And it says simmer. Okay, simmer does not mean crank it all the way up, have this thing blasting, burnt on fire in 5 minutes. Simmer just means maybe start it off about, you know, a little bit medium high, and then turn it down if you need to once it comes to just starts to, you know, start to form those bubbles. Okay, but not boiling. That's what we're looking for when we say simmer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll show you what it looks like in just a few minutes. Okay, friends, it's been about 20 minutes, and I'm noticing some issues with this recipe, and I want to share with you. I'm so glad it happened in our premiere episode. So here's our saucepan. We've got our, apples. They are soft like the recipe said they would be. They are simmering. You can see some of the little bubbles coming up through the apples. But I've noticed that it's really watery. So here's the adjustment I'm going to make. Okay, the recipe says that you were supposed to keep it covered during the 20 minutes, which I did. I'm going to allow the water to escape. The water gets trapped when it's covered like that, so I'm going to let the water escape and continue to cook the apples for, I don't know, another 20 minutes or so. You know what applesauce looks like. So when it starts to look right, the apples are soft, they start to break down. That's when you want to take it off. So I'll show you what the finished product looks like. At the end, it says if you don't like the chunky parts, you can break it down with a fork. You can mush it up, or like a potato masher if you've got one of those. You can make it look more like what applesauce out of a jar looks like. Totally up to you. But I'll show you what it looks like. But for now, I'm going to cook it with the top off so the water can escape. And we'll see what happens. Sometimes you have to make adjustments, and you got to live with it. So we'll see what happens from here on out. See you soon. Okay, boys, it has been about another 15 minutes. It didn't even take 20 minutes to get this under control over here. I'm going to show you what we got. Okay, so again, oops, this is going to tip right into the applesauce. That will not be good at all. It looks like this. So this, I was mashing it with my utensil here while it was cooking, and we did get, and again, mine is a little chunky. If you cut yours smaller, then yours might be not quite as chunky, and that's fine too. Either way, it's going to be delicious. So let me show you. You want to wait until it cools off in order to eat it, because right now this is like nuclear hot. And you'll definitely burn yourself. But here's our finished product. Pretty good, right? And this will freeze pretty well. If you want to leave it, just let it cool off before you put it into any kind of freezer container. Pop it right in the freezer. It'll keep until you want to eat it. It goes great with pork chops, according to my grandma. I always thought that was kind of weird to pair applesauce with pork chops, but that's just me. So that's our first recipe. I think I rate this one like a 6 out of 10. It was all right. A little strange, but we fixed it, which is really the important part. So looking forward to seeing your skills as you try to make this recipe yourself. And remember, don't forget to do the dishes.